Salvete! Hello, this is Latin with Stephen. This is a cultural video. In this video, I'm going to show you some coins, some Roman imperial coins from the time of the Caesars, which coins depict various aspects of the old Roman religion. This is something I find very interesting, and I hope you will too. So welcome and enjoy. So, Roman religion. The term Pax Deorum, peace of the gods, or right relation with the gods, was a term that was used to refer to the way in which Roman people interacted with the divinities. You may have heard of some of the Roman gods, perhaps Jupiter, chief of the gods, maybe Minerva, Mars, the god of war. In the early days, what we are told is that the Romans had a very vague understanding, a very dim conception of these divinities. They were vague spirits called noumena, in the plural, singular noumen, each spirit presiding over different provinces, different aspects of life. Spirits in the trees, in the woods, spirits in the rivers, in the streams, spirits around the household, which were variously revered and placated via offerings, for the most part wine and bits of food and bread, and at a later point incense, at key times perhaps an animal sacrifice, but that certainly wouldn't have been the average day-to-day offering. The people wouldn't have been in a position to do that. But a little bit of wine, a prayer, part of the meal would be offered to the gods. So now the oldest names then that we're familiar with: Jupiter. Mars was common to many of the Latin communities, associated with war and some scholars believe also agriculture. Janus was one of the very early Roman gods, connected with beginnings, doorways. He's the god with two heads facing opposite directions. In fact, in the Roman prayers, it was Janus who was first invoked before any of the other gods. And that leads some scholars to believe that Janus was actually the original chief god of the Romans. The first Roman coins, the bronze or copper ass coinage, on the obverse, the top of the coin, was the face of the picture of Janus, not of any other god. So that's interesting. Now another one of great importance is Vesta. And on our first coin here, this coin depicts Livia. Livia was the wife of Emperor Augustus, the first emperor, and mother of Tiberius, the second emperor. And here she is facing the right, looking very dignified. And underneath we have the word pietas, one of the cardinal Roman values. We get the English word piety from this. Reverence, respect for the gods and also for one's parents. Now here she is perhaps representing a Vestal Virgin with her headdress on. We're told from the historian Tacitus that whenever there were public events, perhaps the theatre or the circus, Livia would attend and take her seat beside the Vestal Virgins. The Vestal Virgins were unique because they were, I think, the only female, certainly in the original Roman religion, only female priestly college. And they tended to the flame of Vesta, the fire that burnt all year round, and these priestesses had to look after the flame and carry out certain rites. They had to collect running water from a particular stream. They couldn't just take it from a well. It had to be living water from vivo flumine, from a living river, to use in their day-to-day rites concerning Vesta. So we see here Livia perhaps connected to the Vestal Virgins, and that would be about right. Augustus really made a great effort to resuscitate the decaying Roman religion, and Livia was very important in terms of her image as the archetypal Roman matron, matrona, dignified, overseeing the spinning of woolen garments and togas in the household, and she was perhaps looked upon as something of a role model. Who knows? But anyway, that's Livia. Now, our next coin, we also have the Temple of Vesta, clearly identified. This is on the reverse coin of Emperor Nero, looking a bit puffy in the cheeks and the chin there, bless him. On the reverse, we've got Vesta and her temple, one of the oldest Roman temples. Originally, they didn't have temples as we imagine them now, as we see them now. Everything was just groves and sacred spots, sacred streams, sacred rocks and stones, and boundary stones. Only later did temples come into play. There were no statues originally either. I said there was a very vague conception of the divinity. So much of these ideas of Greek-style temples and statues came from foreign influences. So here we see this beautiful little temple of Vesta. It was a round temple with a roof, so that the fire did not get extinguished by the elements. And as I mentioned, the Vestal Virgins had to tend this fire all year round. They had 30 years of service in their priestly office, 10 years apparently to learn the role, 10 years to carry it out, and 10 years to pass it on to the next generation, during which period they were not allowed to marry. Any Vestal Virgin contracting relations with a man could possibly suffer the terrible penalty of being buried alive, and we have this recorded under the reign of Emperor Domitian, amongst others. The Vestal Virgins were under the authority of the chief priest, the Pontifex Maximus, who we shall soon come back to. So there we go, we've got Livia in the appearance of a Vestal, we've got the beautiful temple. Let us now look at a coin of Tiberius. And this is a nice gold coin. Tiberius was a second emperor. We can see on the obverse there, going from the bottom right, TI, Tiberius Caesar. And then it says underneath, Caesar Divi Augusti Filius, son, or adopted son actually, of the deified Augustus. Okay, so he's looking to the right, he's wearing his laurel wreath, and on the reverse of the coin we have this seated figure, some kind of divinity, I'm not sure who that is exactly, with a staff, looking very dignified, and around the outside we've got the abbreviated form of Pontifex Maximus. Pontifex Maximus, this was the chief Roman priest, very much the head of the Roman religion. In the early days, they were the sole depositories of Roman law. They alone knew all the workings, the ins and outs of the Roman law. Great advantage to the ruling patrician class, because the priests were exclusively from that caste. So if you were a plebeian, you were one of the lower orders, you had not access to the law, basically, for quite a long time. The emperors from Augustus onwards uniformly took on this role. So when they became emperor, they became chief priest. It was an office that was held for life. It was an office of great importance, also carrying some degree of political clout, I believe. And it wasn't until, I think, Emperor Gratian in the late 4th century AD, the late 300s, that the emperors ceased taking on this role, for it was at that point incompatible with Christianity. But even the earlier Christian emperors, including Constantine himself, at the same time as being patron of Christianity, occupied the office of chief pontiff of the old pagan Roman religions. So there's something of a contradiction there. But anyway, so that's the Pontifex Maximus, a very important figure, thus represented on this coin. Let us move on to a young looking Emperor Nero. Well, at this point he wasn't emperor, he was probably Caesar. That term came to be used as emperor to be in the future, a kind of prince, not a king, if you see what I mean. This was whilst Claudius was emperor. Claudius married Agrippina. Agrippina was Nero's mother, and Claudius in turn adopted Nero later to become emperor, somewhat notorious emperor. But here is a young lad, look at him looking to the left, and on the right we've got the reverse of the coin, and we see a number of rather strange shapes, strange objects. Perhaps you're wondering, what the heck are these? They are indeed the priestly implements of the important Roman colleges. So on the left hand side we have a ladle above some kind of bowl or vessel which probably contained wine. Wine would be used in making offerings to the gods, and this ladle called a simpulum would be used to take some of the wine and then make the offering. So that's quite a famous symbol, religious symbol. And on the right hand side, not quite sure what this circular vessel is, but above that the staff with the curly top, the kind of crooked staff, is called a lituus. And the lituus was the staff used by the Roman augurs, the College of the Augurs, very old priestly college. And their role essentially was to investigate the divine will, not so much to tell the future, but just before any important event, including maybe an election, an assembly, a legislative assembly, the declaring of war, any such key event, both public and private, a marriage for instance, the augurs would have to interpret the divine will by studying the skies to see if the gods gave their assent or dissent. And they would look at bird flight, bird sound. They would camp overnight, and at first light study the skies. They would mark out a section of the sky with this lituus, with this wand, and that section was called the templum. And they would observe the flights of the birds. They would also look for any adverse, strange occurrences. Thunder or lightning was usually a negative omen, which is to say thunder or lightning would vitiate any particular action. It would lead to the cancellation of an assembly, an election for instance. So here we got the College of the Augurs and other priestly implements indicated on this reverse coin of young Nero. Now, in addition to the gods such as Mars and Jupiter, Saturn, Juno, Minerva, the Romans also made gods of concepts, of abstractions. This is quite interesting. And we see one on this next coin of Emperor Nerva. And we've got Nerva with his distinctive nose, looking to the right. Nerva Caesar Augustus, it says, from the bottom left, the legend going round the outskirts of the obverse coin. And on the reverse coin we have this female figure, this divinity. It says SC, which is Senatus Consultum, by decree of the Senate. And this indeed is the goddess Libertas, liberty, the goddess of freedom. So this was actually a goddess, and she's represented there, very dignified. And I think on the other side it should say something like publica, libertas publica, public liberty. It's quite appropriate because Nerva was chosen whilst he was in his 60s. He was a respected lawyer, member of the Senate. He was chosen by the Senate to become emperor after the assassination of Emperor Domitian by members of his inner court. Domitian had been something of a tyrant, and so the Senate chose this rather staid and what they thought would be a safe character. He swore an oath at the outset of his reign not to put any senator to death. And so consequently we have here libertas publica, public liberty, freedom, being celebrated on the very coins itself, ushering in a new era, post-tyranny. We get this quite a lot, similarly after, for instance, the death of Nero. similar ideas. Libertas, aequitas, equity, justitia, justice, all these nice terms, all the good stuff appearing on the coins to mark the change of leadership. So, what have we got next? Another coin of Emperor Nerva. This time he's looking to the right, wearing what they call the radiate crown. This is a Dupondius coin. And again we have a nice dignified looking deity, a female figure. And this is Fortuna, as you might guess, fortune, good fortune, prosperity. And she carries that famous symbol, the cornucopia, under her arm, the symbolizing wealth, prosperity, abundance. The horn of plenty is the English. I was trying to think of it in the English translation, cornucopia. So we've had Libertas, now we have Fortuna, good fortune, under Emperor Nerva. The next coin is another one of Nero's. This is a nice gold coin. Imperator Nero Kaiser Augustus. And this time he's facing the right with the laureate crown. A little bit of stubble there, a little bit of a light beard. Although beards didn't properly come into fashion with the emperors until Hadrian, I don't think. They were all clean shaven up until then. So he's got a bit of a beard going on, bit of chubby cheeks there, quite a thick set neck. It's interesting to study the images of the emperors on the coins. And on the reverse, our main focus, we have Jupiter himself, Jupiter, Optimus Maximus as he was known, the best and the greatest of the gods. And this says Jupiter Custos, another one of his epithets, custodian, guardian, protector. And there he is seated looking magnificent on his throne with a staff and the thunderbolt in his other hand. This coin was often used, or Jupiter Custos, perhaps to signify that the emperor was under the protection. He was placed in charge by the god Jupiter himself. So perhaps there had been an emperor just narrowly escaped an assassination or some kind of disaster or accident. Then thanks would be given to Jupiter Custos for protecting the emperor, and maybe this is the case here. So that's a very nice one, very clear on that coin. Next one, let's go to Emperor Trajan. Trajan was colleague with Emperor Nerva for a short period, and after Nerva's decease, Trajan had a fairly long reign. He was a distinguished soldier, and he added a number of provinces to the empire. Arabia in the east, Parthia, Dacia, as modern Romania. So he had many victories, and we can see here on the obverse the coin with his portrait. In the imperial times, the Caesar was always depicted on the obverse of the coin. Here he's got the laureate crown, Imperator Traiano, or Imperatori Traiano Augusto. And on the reverse, we have another abstraction, another deified abstraction. This is Victoria, victory, often depicted on the coins when there has been some military success, and Trajan certainly had many of these. You can see her with her wings, and she seems to be handing this laurel crown over, almost crowning Trajan after one of his victories. Perhaps it was over Dacia, Romania, perhaps it was Arabia, perhaps it was in Persia. SPQR, Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Senate and the Roman people dedicate this Optimo Principi, to the best of Princeps, was the official title of the what we're calling emperor. It was the head of state. This term was used with this meaning from Augustus onwards, the first citizen, head of state. And Trajan was the first emperor to receive formally this title, Optimus, Princeps Optimus, the best. So a great distinction there. But my main point is this Victoria, this abstraction, this idea, victory, actually being a goddess presiding over, watching over the Roman army, the generals, the emperors, and their triumphs. Augustus had a statue to victory placed in the Senate house, and it stayed there for many a year until the Christian emperors, I think it was Gratian Theodosius, had it removed, and that caused quite a stir, and some of the die-hard last of the pagan senators tried to fight for the statue of victory to be returned, to be restored, in vain, I must say. So there we have victory. Last few coins for you now. Underneath, what have I got here? We have a coin of Vespasian. Vespasian, looking to the right there, quite distinguished. Quite easy to identify given his facial features there. He's got the laurel crown. Vespasianus, he was the first of the Flavian emperors after the fall and the death of Nero and a period of civil war. He then emerged as a new emperor. He was a soldier. And the Julio-Claudians, the first dynasty, were all of old, noble Roman patrician stock, and he was the first one who was not. He was from the Sabine Hills, not far from Rome, still very much Italian, but not of that same bloodline, not of that same stock. His sons Titus and Domitian were the next Flavian emperors. But on the reverse of his coin, we've got this beautiful representation of a temple, and this is a temple, the Capitol Temple, or the Capitoline Temple, on the Capitol Hill in Rome. And it's the temple that contains the statues of the gods Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. The triad, Jupiter in the centre, you can see it's a hexa-style temple, as they call it. 6 columns, 3 kind of levels of steps going up, and we've got Jupiter, his statue in the central, we might call it a chapel, or they call it cella, a cell, and on one side you've got Juno, and on the other side you've got Minerva, the senior female goddesses in Roman religion. And all around and on the top of the temple you've got these beautiful statues. And this is one of the nice things about the coins, where we have temples no longer in existence for us to visit and to see, or perhaps just half or scant remains of the temples. The coins give us some idea of what they actually looked like. And so it's really nice to see this Capitoline Temple, perhaps one of the most important temples of Jupiter Optimus Maximus and Juno and Minerva. Whenever a triumphant general in the early Republic, or the Republican times, had won a military success and been awarded a triumph, which was a formal procession through the city of Rome, with soldiers in chains from the defeated army, all sorts of spoils and his soldiers, he would wend his way up to the Capitoline Temple to make a sacrifice and offering to Jupiter Optimus Maximus. So this is the temple that the triumphant general would go to. And the last coin that I have for you is this one of Divus Augustus Pater, the deified Augustus the Father, looking to the left, looking rather handsome and noble there, with his radiate crown, that crown symbolizing divinity. He's ascended to the gods. Augustus himself had Julius Caesar consecrated upon his death, and Tiberius and the Senate indeed consecrated Augustus. A great many, if not most, of the emperors were indeed consecrated after their death, apart from those who weren't so popular. For whatever reason, Tiberius was not consecrated. Domitian was not consecrated, for instance. Now, on the reverse here, we've got SC Senatus Consultum, and what looks to me is to be the thunderbolt of Jupiter himself, almost connecting the deified Augustus, who has been elevated to a god or a semi-god figure. This was another aspect of the imperial Roman religion. After Augustus's death, Tiberius set up a priestly college, the Sodales, Augustales, the priests of Augustus. So he had a college of his own, and here the lightning bolt, the thunder bolt, seems to associate him with Jupiter or place him under the protection of Jupiter. So very interesting to consider all these various references, depictions, temples and abstractions that give us a sense of what Roman religion was. Just concerning this last coin and the idea of consecration, I've taken a quote from Harold Mattingly, whose seminal work on coins in the British Museum helps us to understand the importance of the coins and what is depicted upon them. And he says this: in the case of Julius Caesar and Augustus, there was probably an element in the consecratio, the consecration, which was neither servile nor diplomatic, but a recognition, natural to that age, of exceptional ability and power. It's rather difficult for us to entertain this idea of imagine a president or a prime minister then being turned into a god, deified, consecrated. But perhaps in a different time and a different circumstance, it was not altogether unimaginable nor unfeasible. So there we go. That's all the coins I've got for you today. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you enjoyed it. And stay tuned for more. I look to come back with some more videos, both language and cultural, in the near future. So thank you for spending this time with me today, and take care. See you soon.